Hello, and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Fracture. Ryland Mercer had built his fortune through calculated risks. At 42, he commanded a shipping empire that spanned 3 continents, with vessels carrying cargo across every major ocean on the planet. His success had been hard-won. 15 years of 70-hour workweeks, strategic partnerships, and an unflinching determination that made competitors wary of crossing him. His marriage to Audrey, however, had not weathered the storm as well as his business. They had met when Ryland was still climbing the ladder, Audrey fresh out of business school with ambitions of her own. Back then, she had admired his drive, his refusal to yield to obstacles. Their wedding, 11 years ago, had been modest. Ryland had insisted on investing in their future rather than spending on extravagance. Audrey had agreed, sharing his vision of building something lasting together. The first few years had been their happiest, working side by side as Ryland's business grew. They bought their first real estate property together, a downtown penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. They talked about children, but always decided to wait until the business was more stable, until they had more time. Now, that penthouse felt empty. Audrey had gradually pulled away from both the business and their marriage. Ryland noticed her absence at company functions, her increasingly elaborate shopping trips, her new friends who seemed to appear from nowhere. Their conversations had grown perfunctory, often limited to logistics and schedules. Still, Ryland had been blindsided when, returning from a business trip to Singapore, he found the penthouse unusually quiet. Audrey's closest friends, Vanessa Porter, had called him unexpectedly that morning. "You need to get home," Vanessa had said, her voice tight. "Just get home." Ryland had never particularly cared for Vanessa. She was a socialite with an appetite for drama, but she had been Audrey's friend since college. The fact that she'd reached out directly set off alarm bells. When he entered the penthouse, everything appeared normal. Audrey's keys were in the crystal bowl by the door. Her jacket hung neatly in the closet. The silence felt wrong. His phone buzzed with a notification. A text from Audrey. "I want a divorce. All communication through my lawyer." Ryland stood motionless, reading the message 3 times. Ice spread through his veins, not from heartbreak, but from rage, cold, calculating rage. His thumb hovered over the keyboard before he typed a single word. Understood. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and sat at his desk, the harbor lights twinkling below. His mind was already shifting gears, analyzing angles, plotting moves. Ryland Mercer didn't get angry. He got even. Within an hour, he'd made 3 calls. The first to his bank. The second to his personal attorney, Nolan Walsh, who had been with him since the start of his business. The third to his head of security, Dominic Santos, a former intelligence operative whose loyalty Ryland had earned by giving him a second chance when no one else would. "I need everything," Ryland told Santos. "Where she goes, who she sees, what she's planning. Don't tell me how you get it. Just get it." Santos didn't ask questions. That was why Ryland valued him. By morning, Ryland had a preliminary report on his desk. Airline reservations, hotel bookings, restaurant receipts. A pattern quickly emerged, and the name Perry Whitaker appeared with alarming frequency. Perry Whitaker, head of the architectural firm that had redesigned 3 of Ryland's properties. The man who had dined at their table, laughed at their parties, and apparently bedded Ryland's wife while accepting his money. Ryland felt a cold smile form. He now had a second target. He poured another whiskey and began to plan. Chapter 2. The Response. Ryland's first move was clinical and precise. With a few keystrokes, Audrey's platinum cards were canceled. Her access to their joint accounts suspended. The monthly allowance he deposited into her personal account terminated. The lease on her BMW X7 flagged for non-renewal. Next, he instructed his attorney to draft a letter to Audrey's parents. Floyd and Beverly Harrington had treated Ryland like a son, unaware of their daughter's infidelity. The letter was respectful but clear. Their vacation home in the Hamptons, which Rylan had purchased from 5 years ago but left in their name, would need to be sold as part of the divorce settlement. Is that really necessary? Nolan asked during their meeting at his office. They're not part of this. Everyone is part of this, Rylan replied, his voice even. You create pressure points. You apply pressure. That's negotiation. 3 days after Audrey's text, Rylan was reviewing quarterly projections when Santos delivered a more detailed report. Audrey and Perry had been meeting for at least 8 months. The affair had begun shortly after Perry's firm had been awarded the contract for Rylan's new corporate headquarters. There's more, Santos said, sliding a folder across the desk. Whitaker's firm is in trouble. They over-leveraged on a development in Phoenix that's now underwater. They're keeping up appearances, but they're hemorrhaging cash. So he's sleeping with my wife while using her to access her husband's contracts, Rylan mused. Ambitious multitasking. Just then, Rylan's phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. Mr. Mercer, a smooth, practiced voice began. This is Howard Levinson. I represent your wife in your pending divorce proceedings. Mr. Levinson, Rylan replied calmly. I've been expecting your call. I'll be blunt, Mr. Mercer. Your actions over the past 72 hours constitute financial abuse. Cutting off all access to funds without warning is not something the courts look favorably upon. I'm merely separating our finances in preparation for the divorce my wife has requested, Rylan said. I'm sure you advised her that would be a natural consequence. Mrs. Mercer requires immediate restoration of her financial resources. She's entitled to maintain her standard of living during these proceedings. Mrs. Mercer is welcome to maintain any standard of living she can afford based on her own income, Rylan replied. I believe that's currently zero. This approach won't serve you well, Mr. Mercer. I'm prepared to file emergency motions. File whatever you'd like. My wife sent me a text stating all communication should go through a lawyer. I'm simply honoring her request by eliminating all forms of communication, including financial ones. Levinson's frustration was palpable even through the phone. She needs access to funds for basic necessities. Define basic necessities, Rylan replied. Is the Four Seasons in Palm Springs a necessity? Or perhaps the Cartier bracelet purchased last week? Or maybe the champagne dinner for two at Tresor, where she didn't pay the bill? The silence on the other end confirmed Rylan's suspicion that Audrey hadn't been fully forthcoming with her attorney. We should meet, Levinson finally said, his tone noticeably subdued. My attorney will be in touch to arrange it. But Mr. Levinson, you should know something. Your client betrayed me with a man whose company depends on my contracts. That man is currently overseeing a $78 million project for my corporation. I haven't yet decided how many people will suffer for their choices, but I assure you, the number isn't zero. After ending the call, Rylan summoned Santos again. I need a complete workup on Howard Levinson. Professional history, personal life, financial situation. Find me leverage. Already underway, Santos replied. And I've got something else. Whitaker has a meeting scheduled with Union Bank tomorrow. Looks like he's trying to secure emergency funding. Rylan smiled thinly. Make a call to Aaron Patterson at Union Bank. Tell him I'd like to discuss potential business opportunities. What kind of opportunities? The kind where Union Bank remembers who its biggest commercial client is before they approve any new loans. As Santos left, Rylan's sister Fiona called. Unlike Rylan, who had inherited their father's coldly analytical mind, Fiona had their mother's warmth. She was the only person who could speak to Rylan with complete honesty. I just heard from Vanessa, she said without preamble. What the hell is happening? Audrey wants a divorce. I'm giving her one. She says you've cut her off completely, that she doesn't even have grocery money. Rylan snorted. She has a $90,000 watch she can sell if she's hungry. Fiona sighed. I know you're hurt. I'm not hurt, he interrupted. I'm calculating damages. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. Sleeping with a business associate for 8 months while I fund both their lifestyles is a choice. He paused. Did you know? Fiona's hesitation told him everything. How long? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. I suspected for a few months. I told her to end it, or tell you. But you didn't tell me. You're my brother. She's my sister-in-law. I was caught in the middle. There is no middle with me, Phi. You know that. He ended the call and stared out at the harbor. The list of people who would pay for this betrayal was growing. Chapter 3. The Intelligence. A week passed. Rylan maintained his routine with mechanical precision, but those who knew him recognized the subtle changes. His already direct management style became ruthless. Decisions that once required meetings were now made unilaterally. Projects were accelerated, partnerships reevaluated, personnel shifted. While his corporation continued to function, Rylan focused his personal attention on gathering intelligence. Santos had assembled a detailed picture of both Audrey and Perry's movements, communications, and vulnerabilities. Perry Whitaker came from old money that had mostly dried up. His architectural firm had been founded by his grandfather, expanded by his father, and was now struggling under his leadership. His marriage to Stephanie Whitaker, a surgeon from a prominent family, had been strained for years but maintained for appearances. They had 2 children in private schools. Perry had pursued Audrey initially for her connections to Rylan, but the relationship had evolved beyond opportunism. They had been discussing a future together. After Perry secured the final payment on the headquarters project, they're planning to move to London, Santos reported. Whitaker's firm has an opportunity to partner with a British development company, supposedly a fresh start. With my money, Rylan noted. Essentially, the headquarters project is their lifeline. The final payment would clear their debts and fund their relocation. Rylan nodded thoughtfully. And Audrey's lawyer? Howard Levinson, divorce attorney to the city's elite. Reputation for aggressive tactics, but he's overextended. Took out a second mortgage last year to buy into a vineyard in Napa. The investment isn't performing well. What else? He's representing 3 high-profile divorce cases simultaneously, including Audrey's. His staff is stretched thin. Good, Rylan said. Pressure him from multiple angles. I want him distracted. Santos nodded and continued. Audrey's staying at the Archer Hotel downtown. Whitaker visits 3 nights a week. She's running through cash quickly. Room service, spa treatments, shopping. Based on her current spending, she'll be broke within 2 weeks. And her parents? They received your letter. Floyd called your office 17 times yesterday. I'll speak with him tomorrow, Rylan said. What about Fiona? She's tried to contact Audrey twice, but Audrey isn't returning her calls. Seems she blames Fiona for not warning her you'd react this way. Rylan allowed himself a small smile. Isolation was setting in, exactly as he'd planned. That evening, Rylan invited his most trusted business associate, Vincent Morrow, to dinner. Vincent had started as Rylan's first employee 15 years ago and now ran the European division of the company. Unlike most of Rylan's inner circle, Vincent had no loyalty to Audrey. You look like hell, Vincent noted as they sat at a private table in Rylan's club. I'm fine. No, you're functional. There's a difference. Vincent studied him. What's your endgame here? Total victory. Define victory. Rylan took a sip of his bourbon. Audrey gets nothing. Whitaker loses everything. Anyone who helped them suffers accordingly. And after that, what does your life look like? I haven't thought that far ahead. Vincent leaned forward. That's not like you. You always plan 3 moves ahead. This is different. Because it's personal, Vincent nodded. Which is why you need to be more calculating than ever. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it's a poor foundation for the next 20 years of your life. Rylan considered this. What would you do? I'd make sure the punishment fits the crime, but I'd keep the long view in mind. Don't burn down your own house to kill a spider. After dinner, Rylan returned to the penthouse and found himself standing in Audrey's closet. Her scent still lingered, an expensive perfume he'd given her for their anniversary. He ran his fingers along her dresses, each one representing an event, a memory. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo from their 10th anniversary. They were on a yacht in the Mediterranean, Audrey laughing as champagne spilled over the edge of her glass. Her eyes were fixed on him with what he had believed was adoration. Had it all been a performance? When had she stopped loving him? Or had she ever truly loved him at all? The questions fueled his resolve. He wouldn't just win this divorce. He would erase any advantage Audrey and Perry thought they had. They would understand the cost of betraying Rylan Mercer. He called Santos. Accelerate the timeline, he instructed. I want everything in place within 2 weeks. That's pushing it, Santos warned. Make it happen. And Santos? It's time to approach Stephanie Whitaker. Chapter 4. The Architect. Perry Whitaker considered himself a master of balancing complex situations. As an architect, he prided himself on creating structures that were both beautiful and functional. He applied the same philosophy to his personal life, maintaining appearances while pursuing what he truly wanted. What he wanted was Audrey, and freedom from the financial quicksand that was threatening to swallow his firm. When he'd first met Audrey at a charity gala, he'd been struck by her elegance and intelligence. Learning she was married to Rylan Mercer, whose company was evaluating architectural firms for a major headquarters project, had been a fortunate coincidence. Cultivating a friendship with the Mercers had seemed like smart business. The affair had begun innocently enough. Lunch meetings to discuss design elements, evening drinks to review proposals. Audrey had been involved in the business then, offering insights that genuinely improved his concepts. Their professional relationship had evolved into friendship, then flirtation, then something deeper. Perry hadn't expected to fall in love. He certainly hadn't planned to build a future with her. But as his firm's financial situation deteriorated and his marriage to Stephanie became increasingly hollow, Audrey represented both emotional and financial salvation. Now, as he sat in the Archer Hotel bar waiting for Audrey, he felt the first real tremors of doubt. The past week had been disastrous. Union Bank had unexpectedly declined his loan application despite preliminary approval. 3 potential clients had canceled meetings. And most concerning, his project manager had reported that inspectors were suddenly finding potential issues with the Mercer headquarters construction that might require costly revisions. Audrey appeared, looking stunning but strained. The week without access to her usual financial resources had forced her to ration her spending, a new experience she clearly found distasteful. Howard says Rylan is being deliberately difficult, she said after ordering a martini. He's refusing mediation and demanding a full trial. Can he do that? Perry asked. Apparently he can do whatever he wants, Audrey replied bitterly. Howard says he's never seen anyone this coldly methodical in a divorce proceeding. Perry nodded, distracted by his buzzing phone. Another email from his accountant warning about cash flow issues. Perry, Audrey said, drawing his attention back. We need to talk about the future. If Rylan is going to fight this hard, we need a contingency plan. The headquarters project is nearly complete, Perry assured her. Once we receive the final payment, we'll have breathing room. And if he finds a way to delay that payment? The question hung in the air, voicing the fear that had been growing in Perry's mind. Before he could respond, his phone rang again, his office number. I need to take this, he apologized, stepping away from the table. Mr. Whitaker, his project manager said without preamble. Mercer Corp just issued a stop work order on the headquarters. They can't do that, Perry protested. We're on schedule, under budget. They're citing concerns about structural specifications. They're bringing in an independent firm to review everything. Could delay completion by months. Perry felt the blood drain from his face. Who authorized this? The order came directly from Rylan Mercer. As Perry ended the call, he turned to see a woman approaching their table. Stephanie, his wife. She was speaking to Audrey with a calm intensity that made his stomach drop. He hurried back, catching the tail end of their conversation. Thought you should hear it from me rather than through attorneys, Stephanie was saying. Audrey's face had gone pale. How long have you known? About your affair with my husband? About 3 months. About your plan to move to London together? Since yesterday. Perry's mind raced. How could Stephanie know about London? They've been extremely careful about those discussions. Stephanie, he began, but she cut him off with a raised hand. I'm not here to make a scene, Perry. I've filed for divorce. My attorney will contact yours tomorrow. She turned back to Audrey. I just thought you should know what you're getting. A man who lies to his wife of 15 years, neglects his children, and mismanages the family business to the brink of collapse. As Stephanie walked away, Audrey turned to Perry with new wariness in her eyes. Your firm is on the brink of collapse? It's not that simple, Perry stammered. We have cash flow issues, but the headquarters project, the project my husband just halted, Audrey's voice was rising. The project you assured me would fund our fresh start? Other patrons were beginning to notice their conversation. Perry lowered his voice. We need to stay calm. Ryland is obviously orchestrating this to divide us. How did Stephanie know about London? Audrey demanded. Perry had no answer, and his silence spoke volumes. Later that night, as Audrey slept fitfully beside him in her hotel room, Perry's phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Your presentation appointment with Bristol Development has been canceled. Mr. Mercer sends his regards. Bristol Development, the British company that was his lifeline for the London expansion. Perry felt icy dread spread through him as he realized the extent of Ryland's reach. Somehow, he knew everything, and methodically, he was dismantling Perry's entire future, piece by piece. Chapter 5. The Pressure. At midnight on day 12 of what Santos now called Operation Severance, Ryland sat in his office reviewing the latest intelligence. The pressure campaign was working better than anticipated. Perry's firm had laid off 6 employees in the past week. Audrey had downgraded from the Archer to a less expensive hotel as her funds dwindled. Howard Levinson had been forced to request a continuance in one of his other high-profile cases, damaging his reputation for efficiency. Most satisfying was the wedge now firmly driven between Audrey and Perry. Their recent arguments had grown heated enough that hotel security had been called twice. Mr. Mercer, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mrs. Whitaker is here to see you. Ryland checked his watch. Right on schedule. Send her in. Stephanie Whitaker entered with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to difficult conversations. As a cardiothoracic surgeon, she dealt with matters of life and death daily. A business meeting, even one as unusual as this, wouldn't intimidate her. Thank you for seeing me, she said, taking the seat he offered. I always make time for business opportunities, Ryland replied smoothly. Is that what this is? That depends on what you want, Dr. Whitaker. Stephanie studied him for a moment. I want what you want. The truth exposed. Consequences delivered. An interesting perspective from someone who's been married to a philanderer for 15 years. If the barb landed, she didn't show it. I've known about Perry's indiscretions for years. I stayed for my children. But this situation with your wife, it crossed the line. Because it threatens your financial security, Ryland observed. Partially, she admitted. But also because Perry and Audrey seem to think they deserve happiness at everyone else's expense. My children's stability. Your business reputation. My practices standing in the community. Ryland nodded appreciatively. This was why he'd wanted to meet Stephanie directly. Santos had reported she was intelligent and pragmatic, traits Ryland respected. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. An alliance. I have information you can use. You have influence I need. Be specific. Perry keeps a second set of books for the firm. The official records show a struggling but legitimate business. The reality is that he's been siphoning funds for years, preparing for an exit. Ryland leaned forward. Do you have proof? Stephanie reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. 15 years of marriage teaches you where to look. Everything's here: accounts, transfers, communications with offshore entities. Why give this to me instead of using it in your divorce? Because a divorce court would give me half of nothing. Perry's destroyed most of the firm's actual value. But you, she smiled thinly, you can use this to destroy him completely. And in exchange, you can help ensure my children don't lose everything because of their father's choices. Ryland took the flash drive. What do you want? 3 things. First, a position for my brother at your city office. He's qualified but needs a fresh start. Second, continued enrollment for my children at Westridge Academy. Their tuition was paid through Perry's firm. Third, your word that whatever happens to Perry and Audrey won't splash back on my family. Ryland considered her requests. They were reasonable, specific, and actionable. I accept your terms, Dr. Whitaker, with one addition: complete discretion about our arrangement. Agreed, she said, standing to leave. At the door, she paused. Mr. Mercer? They really do love each other, you know? It wasn't just about money or opportunity. Does that matter? It should. Love is rare. Betrayal is common. After she left, Rylan inserted the flash drive into his computer. The contents were more damning than he'd expected. Perry hadn't just mismanaged the firm. He'd committed outright fraud. Multiple projects, including Ryland's headquarters, had been built with substandard materials while charging for premium specifications. This wasn't just leverage. It was ammunition. He called Santos. "Give me everything on Westridge Academy's board of directors. And call Vincent about a position in Sydney for Dr. Gregory Holden." The next morning, Ryland received an unexpected visitor. Floyd Harrington, Audrey's father, stood in his office reception area, looking diminished. At 70, Floyd had always maintained a distinguished presence, but now he seemed hollowed out. "I need to speak with you, son," he said, the familiar address striking Ryland as both sincere and manipulative. In his office, Floyd declined a drink and came straight to the point. "Whatever Audrey's done, this isn't the way to handle it. Beverly hasn't slept in days. The thought of losing the Hamptons' house, it's breaking her heart. Audrey should have considered that before she decided to destroy our marriage. People make mistakes, Ryland. God knows I've made my share. This wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated decision made repeatedly over months." Floyd sighed heavily. "Maybe so, but punishing her parents won't change what's happened." "No," Ryland agreed, "but it will ensure she understands the full cost of her choices." "Is there nothing I can say to change your mind?" Ryland studied the man who had welcomed him into their family, who had treated him with more warmth than his own father ever had. "There is one thing," Ryland said finally. "Tell Audrey to drop Howard Levinson and agree to my settlement terms. The house stays in your name, you keep your monthly stipend, and this ends quickly." "And what are your terms for Audrey?" "She walks away with nothing except what she brought into the marriage." Floyd looked pained. "That's harsh, son. It's merciful compared to what I could do." After Floyd left, Ryland received a call from the detective he'd hired to monitor Audrey's communications. Audrey had reached out to Fiona again, this time with a request to meet. Fiona had agreed. "Should we intercept?" the detective asked. "No," Ryland decided. "Let them meet. Record everything." The meeting took place that afternoon at a small cafe. Fiona, always punctual, arrived 5 minutes early. Audrey, looking noticeably less polished than usual, arrived 10 minutes late. "Thank you for coming," Audrey said, her voice subdued. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Fiona admitted. "Ryland hasn't forgiven me for not telling him about you and Perry." How is he? How do you think he is, Audrey? You betrayed him in the worst possible way, then try to take half of everything he's built. That's not fair. I contributed to building his business too, in the beginning." "In the beginning," Fiona emphasized, "before you decided his work ethic was a character flaw rather than the reason for your comfortable lifestyle." Audrey flinched. "I know I've made mistakes." "Save it," Fiona interrupted. "I'm not here for your apologies. I'm here to warn you. Ryland isn't just angry. He's methodical. Do you understand what that means? He's trying to punish me financially." "I get it." "No, you don't. Financial pressure is just the first phase. He's dismantling every aspect of the future you and Perry planned. The London move? Never going to happen. Perry's firm? We'll be bankrupt within a month. Your reputation in this city? He's making sure every door will be closed to you." Audrey's face had gone pale. "How do you know all this?" "Because I know my brother. And because Vincent told me about the warehouse meeting." "What warehouse meeting?" Fiona hesitated. "I've already said too much." "Fiona, please. If Ryland is planning something dangerous." "Ryland doesn't get his hands dirty, but he makes sure people pay for betraying him." Fiona stood. "My advice? Take whatever settlement he's offering and disappear. Because what's coming will be much worse than losing your credit cards." As Fiona left, Audrey sat frozen, her coffee untouched. There was no warehouse meeting. Fiona had fabricated that detail at Ryland's request. But the seed of fear had been planted. When Ryland received the recording of the conversation, he smiled for the first time in weeks. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 would begin tomorrow. Chapter 6, The Alliance. On day 17, Audrey's attorney called Ryland's office 12 times. Each call was routed to voicemail. "Howard Levinson," whose reputation had been built on aggressive representation, found himself in the unfamiliar position of being the aggressor who couldn't land a punch. Meanwhile, Ryland met with the CEO of Bristol Development, the British company that had been Perry's hope for expansion to London. "I appreciate you considering my proposal on such short notice," Ryland told Walter Brighton, the silver-haired executive whose company controlled significant portions of London's commercial real estate. "Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Mercer," Brighton replied. "When you suggest a joint venture might be mutually beneficial, intelligent business people listen. And when I warn that a potential partner may not be what they seem, we listen even more carefully." Brighton tapped the folder Ryland had provided, containing evidence of Perry's fraudulent practices. "This would have been catastrophic for us. We were prepared to invest £20 million in Whitaker's firm. Consider it a gesture of goodwill between future partners," Ryland said. "My shipping infrastructure and your development portfolio could create interesting opportunities." By the time Brighton left, they had outlined a preliminary agreement for a joint venture, one that would completely bypass Perry Whitaker and establish Mercer Corp as a significant presence in the London market. That afternoon, Ryland received word that Audrey had attempted to check out of her hotel, only to discover her bill had an outstanding balance of nearly $18,000. Her credit cards were declined. The hotel was holding her luggage until payment could be arranged. Precisely as planned, Ryland's phone rang, a number he recognized as Floyd Harrington's. "Ryland," Floyd began, his voice strained. "Audrey's agreed to your terms." "All of them?" "Yes. She'll sign whatever you put in front of her. Just end this. Please. Have her at Nolan's office tomorrow at 2 p.m. Alone." When Ryland arrived at Nolan's office the next day, Audrey was already seated in the conference room. She looked exhausted, her designer clothes slightly rumpled, her makeup minimal. She didn't stand when he entered. "Where's Howard?" Ryland asked, noting the absence of her attorney. "I fired him," she said flatly. "He wasn't getting results." Nolan entered with a thick document. "This is the settlement agreement as discussed. Ms. Mercer, I must advise you that without legal representation—" "Understand what I'm signing," Audrey interrupted. "Let's get this over with." Ryland studied her face as she flipped through the pages. The agreement was brutal in its simplicity. Audrey would receive no alimony, no property, no shares in the business. She would retain only her personal belongings and a one-time payment of $50,000, less than the cost of her jewelry collection. "You're being unusually quiet," she noted without looking up at him. "I have nothing to say to you. Not even why. Don't you want to know why I did it? I know why. Perry made you feel special while I was building the business that funded your lifestyle." She finally met his gaze. "That's not it. I did it because for the past 5 years, I've been invisible to you. Perry sees me. He listens. He values more than just what I can contribute to a balance sheet." How poetic. I'm sure those sentiments will keep you warm when you're living on $50,000. Audrey's hand stilled over the signature page. "What happens after I sign this?" "You walk away. Your parents keep their house. We never speak again." "And Perry? What happens to him?" Ryland smiled coldly. "That's no longer your concern." She signed the document, her hand trembling slightly. As Nolan witnessed her signature, she looked up at Ryland one last time. "I did love you once," she said quietly. "I want you to know that." "It wasn't enough," he replied. After she left, Nolan turned to Ryland. "That was surprisingly easy. She's desperate, and she thinks this ends it. Doesn't it? You got the settlement you wanted." "The divorce is settled," Ryland corrected. "The reckoning isn't complete." Later that evening, Ryland met with Vincent and Santos at his penthouse. The three men sat around Ryland's dining table, reviewing the final elements of what Santos had dubbed the extinction event. "The regulatory filing is ready," Vincent reported. "As soon as you give the word, the evidence of Whitaker's fraud goes to the licensing board, the building department, and the district attorney. His current clients have been quietly approached," Santos added. "They're preparing to pull their projects once the news breaks. We've arranged for coverage in the business section of 3 newspapers." "And Stephanie Whitaker?" Ryland asked. "Secured as agreed. Her brother starts in Sydney next month. The children's tuition at Westridge, is paid through graduation. She signed a confidentiality agreement. Rylan nodded, satisfied with the arrangements. What about Plan B? Vincent and Santos exchanged glances. It's ready, Vincent said carefully. But Rylan, are you sure? Once this is done, there's no going back. Not just for Whitaker, but for you. Rylan considered the question. Plan A, the regulatory and financial destruction of Perry Whitaker, would be devastating enough. Plan B added a personal dimension that crossed into darker territory. Keep it ready, Rylan decided. I'll make the final call tomorrow. After they left, Rylan stood at his window, looking out at the city lights. The victory he'd expected to feel remained elusive. He had Audrey's signature on the divorce papers. Perry's destruction was imminent. Yet he felt hollow. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When he opened it, he found a photo of Audrey and Perry arguing in what appeared to be a parking garage. The timestamp showed it was taken just hours ago. The next text read, "They're meeting about you. Planning something." Rylan felt a surge of fresh anger. Even now, they were scheming. Proceed with Plan B, he texted Santos. No delays. The response came instantly. Understood. Extinction event commences at 9 a.m. Chapter 7. The Execution. At precisely 9 a.m., Perry Whitaker arrived at his firm's headquarters to find two men in suits waiting in his reception area. They weren't scheduled appointments. Mr. Whitaker, the older man said, flashing a badge. Detective Russell, Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize financial records. Perry felt the blood drain from his face. There must be some mistake. No mistake, sir, the second man said, handing him a document. We have evidence of materials fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. As Perry scanned the warrant, his phone began buzzing incessantly. Staff were calling from job sites across the city where similar scenes were unfolding. Police, building inspectors, regulatory officials arriving simultaneously. It was a coordinated attack, executed with military precision. By noon, news vans had gathered outside the firm's office. Perry's face was splashed across local news channels, with headlines about architect to the elite facing criminal charges. Clients were publicly distancing themselves. The American Institute of Architects issued a statement about launching an ethics investigation. Perry tried desperately to reach Audrey, but his calls went straight to voicemail. When he finally managed to get through to his wife, Stephanie's voice was cold. Your attorney can contact mine regarding the children's visitation, she said. Otherwise, I have nothing to say to you. Stephanie, please, I need access to our joint account. They've frozen the firm's assets. How unfortunate. Perhaps you should have considered these possibilities before you decided to commit fraud and adultery simultaneously. By 3 p.m., Perry sat alone in his office, watching through the glass partition as police methodically boxed files and electronics. His staff had been sent home. His attorney had advised him to say nothing to anyone. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, South Parking Garage. Level P3, 20 minutes. Come alone. Perry hesitated only briefly before grabbing his jacket. With nothing left to lose, even a mysterious meeting seemed like a lifeline. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet for a weekday afternoon. As Perry approached level P3, he saw a solitary figure standing beside a black SUV. It took him a moment to recognize Dominic Santos. Mr. Whitaker, Santos greeted him without warmth. This way, please. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what this is about. It's about your future. What's left of it? Santos opened the SUV's rear door, revealing Rylan Mercer sitting inside. Perry's surprise quickly turned to anger. He spat. You did all this. Get in, Rylan said calmly. Unless you'd prefer to continue this conversation with the detective who's currently cataloging evidence against you. Perry reluctantly climbed into the vehicle. Santos closed the door and moved to the driver's seat, but remained outside, giving them privacy. What do you want? Perry demanded. To make myself clear, Rylan replied. Today is just the beginning. By this time next week, your license will be revoked. Your firm will be bankrupt. Your reputation will be irreparable. You've made your point. You've won. Not quite. You took something from me, Perry. Something I valued. If you mean Audrey, she wasn't happy with you long before I came into the picture. Ryland's expression remained impassive. I'm not talking about my wife. I'm talking about trust, loyalty, integrity. You sat at my table. You accepted my business. And all the while, you were sleeping with my wife and defrauding my company. Perry swallowed hard. What do you want from me? I want you to understand something. The evidence against you isn't just about shoddy materials or creative accounting. There's a paper trail suggesting you deliberately compromised structural elements of buildings to cut costs, including my headquarters. That's not true. I would never. The truth doesn't matter. The evidence exists, and it's compelling. The potential civil liability alone would bankrupt you 10 times over. The criminal charges could mean prison. Perry felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. You fabricated evidence. I didn't have to. Your own records provided most of what I needed. Stephanie supplied the rest. The mention of his wife struck Perry like a physical blow. Stephanie, she's quite thorough. Apparently, she's been documenting your indiscretions for years. Perry slumped in his seat, the full extent of his situation finally sinking in. What happens now? Ryland handed him a thick envelope. Inside is a one-way ticket to Puerto Vallarta, departing tonight. There's also $50,000 in cash and contact information for someone who can help you establish a new identity. You will never return to this country. You will never contact Audrey again. You will leave now, directly from this garage, with nothing but what you're carrying. And if I refuse, then I release the evidence about the structural compromises to the press. The district attorney upgrades the charges to include public endangerment. And I personally ensure that you spend the next decade in prison, where your reputation as a wealthy architect who endangered lives for profit will make you exceptionally popular. Perry stared at the envelope, the magnitude of the choice before him becoming clear. You've thought of everything. No, Ryland corrected. I thought of every way to destroy you. I selected the option that allows you to survive. Don't mistake it for mercy. As Perry took the envelope, Ryland added, Santos will drive you to a private airfield. If you attempt to contact anyone or deviate from the plan, the deal is void. Do you understand? Perry nodded numbly. Before exiting the SUV, Ryland paused. One last thing. Was she worth it? Truly. Perry met his gaze for the first time. Yes, he answered honestly. She was. Is that what you wanted to hear? It's what I expected to hear, Ryland replied. Goodbye, Perry. As Ryland walked away, his phone buzzed with a notification. The headline read, Award-winning architect disappears amid fraud allegations. Phase 2 was complete. Chapter 8, The Revelation. 3 days after Perry's disappearance, Audrey sat in a small apartment she'd rented with the settlement money. Her phone had been ringing constantly. Friends, acquaintances, gossip columnists seeking comment on Perry's disgrace and subsequent vanishing act. She had spoken to no one. The Perry revealed in news reports was unrecognizable, a calculating fraudster who had endangered lives with substandard building practices. The evidence seemed overwhelming, with former employees coming forward to corroborate the allegations. Yet something felt wrong about the entire situation. Perry had been ambitious, perhaps even ruthless in business, but he had spoken passionately about architectural integrity. The idea that he would deliberately compromise structural safety seemed incongruous with the man she knew. Her doorbell rang unexpectedly. When she checked the peephole, she was surprised to see Fiona standing there. Can I come in? Fiona asked when Audrey opened the door. The apartment was a stark contrast to the luxury Audrey had known for years. Basic furniture, minimal decor, utilitarian in every way. Quite a change, Fiona noted, looking around. What do you want, Fiona? To check on you. Despite everything, we were friends once. Audrey laughed bitterly. Friends don't stand by while their brother destroys people. Is that what you think happened? Ryland destroyed Perry. Didn't he? The coordinated raids, the media coverage, the conveniently timed evidence. It has Ryland written all over it. Fiona sat down uninvited. What if I told you Perry was already under investigation? That Ryland just accelerated the timeline? I wouldn't believe you. Believe what you want. The evidence against Perry is real. Multiple projects, not just Ryland's, were compromised. Audrey shook her head in denial. I don't accept that. I knew him. You knew what he wanted you to know, Fiona interrupted. Just like Ryland only saw what he wanted to see in you. The parallel struck, Audrey silent. I brought you something, Fiona said, placing a USB drive on the coffee table. Evidence that wasn't included in the public record. You should see it before you decide who the victim is in this story. After Fiona left, Audrey stared at the drive for nearly an hour before finally plugging it into her laptop. The contents were devastating. Emails between Perry and various contractors discussing deliberate substitutions of materials, calculations of cost savings, strategies to avoid detection. Most damning was a series of messages between Perry and his project manager about the Mercer headquarters, specifically discussing how to cut corners while maintaining the appearance of premium construction. RM never visits the site, one email read. He won't know the difference, and it adds 12% to our margin. The final document was a detailed financial analysis showing how Perry had been systematically draining the firm's accounts for years, preparing for an eventual exit. The London plan had never been about a fresh start with Audrey. It had been an escape route. Audrey closed her laptop, feeling physically ill. She had sacrificed her marriage, her security, her reputation, all for a man who had apparently been using her as surely as he'd used everyone else. Her phone rang again. This time, she answered. Hello. Ms. Mercer, an unfamiliar voice asked. This is Detective Russell with the Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to speak with you regarding Perry Whitaker's business practices. I don't know anything about his business, she replied automatically. Our investigation suggests otherwise. You were closely involved with Mr. Whitaker during the period when these fraudulent activities occurred. Your name appears on several meeting calendars where these decisions were discussed. Audrey felt a chill. That's not possible. I never attended any business meetings. We have witnesses who place you at these meetings, Ms. Mercer. We'd like you to come in voluntarily for questioning. Otherwise, we'll be forced to issue a formal summons. After ending the call, Audrey sat paralyzed with fear. She had never attended Perry's business meetings. Someone was lying, either to the police or to her. On an impulse, she called the one person who might have answers. Ryland answered on the first ring, as if he'd been expecting her call. Is this your doing? She demanded without preamble. Are you setting me up to take the fall for Perry's crimes? Hello, Audrey, he replied calmly. I see you've heard from Detective Russell. Answer the question. I'm not setting you up, but I'm not protecting you either. I had nothing to do with Perry's business practices. Perhaps, but you were photographed at locations where these meetings allegedly took place. Your signature appears on guest registers. Your card was used to pay for meals where these discussions occurred. The implications were clear. Evidence had been fabricated to implicate her. Why? She whispered. Wasn't the divorce enough? You once told me Perry sees you, values you. Now you'll see if that's true. If he's monitoring the situation, if he truly loves you, he'll come forward to clear your name. And if he doesn't, then you'll face the consequences of trusting the wrong man. Ryland ended the call, leaving Audrey to contemplate her limited options. She could run, fight the allegations, or hope Perry somehow learned of her situation and intervened. None seemed likely to end well. As night fell, Audrey made a desperate decision. She called Floyd, explaining the situation and begging for help. Her father, despite everything, agreed to connect her with a criminal defense attorney. This is Ryland's endgame, she told her father. He wants me ruined or imprisoned. I'll speak to him, Floyd promised. There must be a way to end this. But when Floyd attempted to reach Ryland, he found all access blocked. Messages weren't returned. Calls weren't accepted. The man who had once been like a son had become completely inaccessible. That night, Audrey packed a small bag, withdrew the remaining settlement money from her account, and prepared to flee. As she was leaving the apartment, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. South Parking Garage, Level P3, 30 minutes. Come alone. She recognized the pattern. The same message Perry had likely received before his disappearance. It was a trap, surely. Yet it might be her only chance to understand what was happening. With nothing left to lose, Audrey headed for the parking garage. Chapter 9, The Aftermath. The parking garage was deserted when Audrey arrived, her footsteps echoing in the concrete structure. Level P3 was dimly lit, creating pools of shadow between the sparse overhead lights. She hesitated, suddenly aware of the foolishness of coming alone. As she turned to leave, a voice called out from the darkness. He said you would come. Dominic Santos stepped into the light, his expression unreadable. Where's Rylan? Audrey demanded. Not here, but he sent me with this. Santos handed her an envelope similar to the one Perry had received. Inside is a passport, plane ticket, and $50,000. The same offer Perry received. Disappear tonight, never return, never contact anyone from your former life. Audrey took the envelope with trembling hands. And the investigation will be dropped once you're gone. No charges filed. Why is he doing this? Why not just let the divorce be the end of it? Santos studied her for a moment. Mr. Mercer believes in symmetry. Perry betrayed him professionally and personally. You did the same. Perry lost his career and identity. Now so will you. This is insane, Audrey whispered. We heard him, yes. But this is beyond revenge. This isn't revenge, Santos corrected. It's justice as Mr. Mercer sees it. The punishment fits the crime. Where did Perry go? That's not your concern. Your paths won't cross again. That's part of the arrangement. Audrey clutched the envelope, her mind racing. What if I refuse? What if I stay and fight the allegations? Then evidence will continue to emerge. Not just about Perry's business, but about your knowledge of it. Emails you supposedly wrote. Meetings you allegedly attended. Your fingerprints on documents you never touched. Santos shrugged. The evidence is quite convincing. He fabricated all of it. Some, not all. Perry really did defraud clients. He really did compromise buildings. He really was planning to leave the country with money stolen from his firm. You just weren't actively involved until now. The cold calculation of it all left Audrey speechless. Rylan had orchestrated a complete dismantling of both their lives, all while remaining legally untouchable himself. The choice is yours, Santos continued. But Mr. Mercer asked me to remind you that Floyd and Beverly's Hampton house remains in their name only at his discretion. Their financial security depends on your decision tonight. It was the final pressure point, her parents. If she refused, Rylan would ensure they suffered too. The flight leaves in 3 hours, Santos added. A car is waiting to take you directly to the airport. You have 5 minutes to decide. Audrey opened the envelope, examining the contents. The passport showed her photo, but a different name. The plane ticket was to Buenos Aires. The cash was neatly bundled. How did it come to this? She asked, more to herself than Santos. You chose Perry, Santos replied simply. Mr. Mercer ensures that choices have consequences. 5 minutes later, Audrey sat in the back of a black SUV heading toward the airport. Her old life was over. Whether the new one would be better or worse remained to be seen. At his penthouse, Rylan received Santos's message confirming Audrey's departure. He stood at the window, watching the city lights as he had so many nights during the past month of calculated destruction. Vincent arrived shortly after, carrying a bottle of rare whiskey. Is it done? It's done, Rylan confirmed. Perry in Mexico. Audrey en route to Argentina, neither with any means of finding the other. Vincent poured 2 glasses and handed one to Rylan. To resolution, then. Rylan accepted the glass, but didn't drink immediately. Not quite resolution. One piece remains. Floyd and Beverly, they get to keep their house. I'm not completely heartless. Vincent studied his friend. Then what's the final piece? Fiona, Rylan said quietly. She knew about the affair for months and said nothing. Vincent's expression grew concerned. Rylan, she's your sister. She chose loyalty to Audrey over loyalty to me. There are consequences for that choice. What are you planning? Nothing dramatic. Just a lesson in priorities. Rylan finally sipped his whiskey. She's been trying to secure funding for her nonprofit for years. I've arranged for her primary donor to pull out next week. That seems excessive. It's measured. She'll struggle, then recover. But she'll understand that betrayal, even by omission, carries a cost. Vincent shook his head slightly. And after that, when everyone has paid their debt to Rylan Mercer. What then? Rylan turned back to the window. I expand the business. Open the London office. Move forward. Alone. For now. Trust is a rare commodity. In the weeks that followed, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. Rylan immersed himself in work, finalizing the deal with Brighton's company and accelerating the completion of his headquarters with a new architectural firm. Perry Whitaker's professional disgrace became old news. His firm declared bankruptcy. Former clients filed lawsuits that would never find a defendant to hold accountable. Audrey Mercer faded from social circles, her absence initially the subject of gossip, then gradually forgotten as new scandals emerged to capture attention. Floyd and Beverly kept their Hampton house, though Floyd never again attempted to contact the man who had once been like a son to him. Fiona's nonprofit lost its primary funding, forcing her to lay off staff and scale back programs. She understood the message immediately and made no effort to reconcile with her brother. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Rylan hosted a reception for the opening of Mercer Tower, the headquarters that Perry had designed but would never see completed. Business leaders, politicians, and socialites filled the stunning atrium, marveling at the architectural achievement. As Rylan moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, Vincent appeared at his side. Impressive turnout, Vincent noted. The mayor, 2 senators, and the British ambassador. You've recovered your position admirably. Recovery implies I lost something valuable, Rylan replied. Didn't you? Before Rylan could answer, a waiter approached with a small package. This was left for you at reception, Mr. Mercer. The package contained no card or note, just a small object wrapped in tissue paper. When Rylan unwrapped it, he found a platinum wedding band with a familiar inscription, Always. His and Audrey's rings had been custom-made, the inscription visible only on the inside of the band. Problem? Vincent asked, noting Rylan's sudden stillness. No, Rylan replied, slipping the ring into his pocket. Just a reminder of a closed chapter. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Rylan examined the ring more carefully. It was indeed Audrey's, the one she had left behind when she signed the divorce papers. But he had stored it in his safe. No one had access. The message was clear. Whatever he believed about the completeness of his victory was an illusion. Someone, perhaps Santos, perhaps Fiona, perhaps someone else, had orchestrated this small act of defiance. Rylan dropped the ring into a glass of whiskey and watched it sink to the bottom. Let's stay there, he thought. A reminder that no victory is ever total, no enemy ever completely vanquished, no betrayal ever fully avenged. But as he stared at the submerged ring, a cold smile formed on his face. If someone thought this small gesture would unsettle him, they had miscalculated. He had destroyed 2 lives without hesitation. He had cut off his sister without remorse. He had constructed an elaborate revenge requiring months of planning and flawless execution. A mysterious package wouldn't shake him. If anything, it presented a new challenge. Identifying who had dared to send this message and ensuring they understood that Rylan Mercer's capacity for retribution was limitless. He raised his glass in a silent toast to the future and to the next adversary foolish enough to cross him. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.